All right, everyone. Ready to dive in. Today we're going deep. Deep into the world of interrogation analysis.
Ooh, interrogation analysis.
You know that thing where investigators try to figure out if someone's lying or not?
Yeah, exactly.
We've got a fascinating YouTube video lined up from JCS Criminal Psychology.
I know JCS. I love that channel.
Yeah, me too. Really insightful stuff. This one's called, let me see here, Guilty Until Proven Innocent.
Okay, interesting title.
Right. Makes you think, doesn't it? Have you ever, watched one of those crime shows and thought, oh, I could totally spot a liar?
Oh, all the time. Haha.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But this deep dive might just challenge those assumptions a bit.
Oh, I love a good challenge. Hit me with it.
Okay, so we're going to be exploring this sneaky thing called hindsight bias.
Hindsight bias.
You know, that whole I knew it all along phenomenon?
Oh, yeah, I getcha.
And apparently, it can really mess with how we analyze interrogations.
Really? I wouldn't have thought about that.
It's a real curveball.
So you're saying we're more likely to be biased after we know the outcome of a case?
Seems that way, yeah.
Huh, that's interesting. You'd think it'd be the other way around, right? Like, it'd be easier to spot deception once you know someone is guilty.
That's what I thought, too.
But, I mean, think about it. When someone's guilty, they're usually putting on a show, right? They're trying to mislead the investigators.
Back up for their tracks, all that.
Exactly. So their behavior is harder to read, both in the moment and when you look back on it.
Makes sense. It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Perfect analogy.
So how does this hindsight bias, how does it affect how we perceive innocent people?
Well, the video argues that innocent people are often more straightforward, you know?
Right. They're not trying to hide anything.
Yeah, so their actions can seem more obvious in hindsight, but not because they're actually guilty, just because they fit the narrative that we create after we know the outcome.
So we're kind of filling in the blanks with assumptions.
Exactly. And to illustrate this, the video presents a couple of really interesting case studies.
Ooh, case studies. Love those. Lay it on me.
All right, so the first one is about this guy, Michael Dixon, 37 years old, wrongly accused of burglary.
I remember that case. Wasn't he, super introverted?
Yeah, the video describes him as pretty quiet and reserved.
And yet he remained totally calm during the interrogation.
Right, and that's what's so interesting about his case.
You'd think he'd be freaking out, you know?
Most people would, right, especially if they were innocent.
Yeah, exactly.
But Dixon didn't. He was composed, cooperative, even when the detective was, totally convinced he was guilty.
So his calmness was almost like a challenge.
In a way, yeah. It defied the expectation that innocent people will be visibly nervous or anxious when they're accused.
So if the investigators had already assumed he was DT, his calmness could have been interpreted as a sign of deception.
Exactly. It shows how our preconceived notions can shape how we interpret even neutral behavior.
And there's that part in the video where they talked about a nonverbal challenge, right?
Oh, yeah, that was fascinating. Basically, at one point, the detective shifts in his seat and kind of breaks eye contact with Dixon.
Maybe a sign of discomfort.
Maybe. And what does Dixon do? He follows the detective's gaze with this slow, deliberate head movement.
Like he's saying, I see you, but I'm not fazed.
Exactly. It's subtle, but in the context of an interrogation, those little cues can be really significant, you know?
Especially when you analyze them with the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah, it could be seen as a sign of dominance, of knowing something the detective doesn't.
Even though it might have just been Dixon's way of dealing with the stress of the situation.
Exactly. It's all about interpretation, and that's where hindsight bias can really come into play.
Wow, so much going on beneath the surface, huh? Okay, so we've got Michael Dixon, the introvert who stays calm under pressure, but the video contrasts his case with another one.
Oh, right, I remember this. This one's about a younger guy, 26 years old, named Justin.
Yeah, and the charges against him were pretty serious.
Yeah, breaking and entering, theft, assault, the whole 9 yards.
Facing a potential 20-year sentence, that's heavy.
And unlike Dixon, Justin was anything but calm during the interrogation.
Oh, so he was more, agitated?
Yeah, he became increasingly agitated as the interrogation went on, really forcefully asserting his innocence.
I mean, I can understand why. If you were facing that kind of time, wouldn't you be upset?
Totally. But here's the thing.
What's that?
Justin, like Dixon, was innocent.
Oh, wow. So his anger was a genuine response to being falsely accused.
Exactly.
So we're seeing two totally different reactions, both from innocent men.
Right. And that's why it's so important to remember there's no single tell that reveals if someone's lying or telling the truth.
So how do we make sense of these cases then? Like, how do we avoid falling into the trap of hindsight bias?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's what we'll be diving into next.
Can't wait to hear what you have to say about that.
All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll get back to it.
Yeah, it's like that whole guilty until proven innocent thing, right? Like, we're almost wired to assume the worst.
It's a dangerous assumption, isn't it? And the video really highlights the potential consequences of that kind of thinking.
Especially in a high-pressure situation like an interrogation.
Absolutely. When the stakes are high, it's even easier to let our biases take over.
Like, we want to believe that the justice system works, you know?
We want to trust that the police are doing their job, catching the bad guys.
But these cases show that it's not always that simple, is it?
No, not at all. Even with the best intentions, mistakes can be made. Evidence can be misinterpreted.
And innocent people can get caught in the crossfire.
Exactly. And the video gives a really good example of this with Dixon's case.
Oh, right. What was it again?
So remember how the 911 caller described the suspect?
Was it a small white male or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. And Dixon is like 6'3" and not white.
Yeah, that's a pretty big discrepancy.
A huge discrepancy. And yet, the detective completely overlooked it.
How is that even possible?
It's hindsight bias in action.
You're saying that once the detective had decided Dixon was guilty, he just kind of ignored anything that didn't fit that narrative.
That's exactly what the video argues. It's like he was subconsciously filtering information to confirm his existing belief.
Wow, that's scary. So it's not just about misinterpreting behavior, it's about, like, actually distorting the facts of the case.
It's a slippery slope, and that's why the video emphasizes the importance of due process.
Due process.
Yeah, those safeguards that are in place to protect innocent people from being wrongfully convicted.
Checks and balances, right. Making sure everyone gets a fair shake.
That's the idea, and in Dixon's case, it was another investigator who eventually took a more objective look at the evidence and realized something wasn't right.
So it was like having a second set of eyes saved the day.
You could say that, and it makes you think, how many other cases are out there where that hasn't happened? Where someone's fate rests on the judgment of a single person who might be subconsciously biased?
It's a sobering thought. And it brings us to Justin's case. Remember, he spent over 2 years in prison before being exonerated.
Yeah, 2 years. Just imagine the impact that has on a person's life. The lost time, the emotional toll, the stigma that comes with being accused of a serious crime.
It's hard to even fathom.
It really drives home the point that hindsight bias isn't just some abstract concept. It has real-world consequences.
And it makes you wonder, what can we do about it? Like, we're not all detectives or lawyers, but we do make judgments about people all the time, right?
We do, and that's where the video's message really resonates. It's about becoming more aware of our own biases, you know?
Recognizing that we all have these preconceived notions that can cloud our judgment.
Exactly, and it's about being willing to challenge those notions, to seek out different perspectives, to be open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
Easier said than done, though, right?
It is, but it's a skill we can all develop. It starts with asking ourselves questions, being critical of the information we consume, and not just blindly accepting whatever narrative is presented to us.
So, like, next time we're watching a crime show or reading a news article, we should actively try to think about other possibilities.
Yes. Don't just take things at face value. Ask yourself, is there another way to interpret this? What information am I missing? Could there be another side to the story?
It's like developing a healthy sense of skepticism.
And that's valuable not just in the context of crime and justice, but in all areas of life.
Totally. We're bombarded with information these days, and it's more important than ever to be able to think critically and discern fact from fiction.
And I think this ties back into the idea of due process. It's about giving everyone a chance to be heard and understood, to present their side of the story, and to have their perspective considered.
Instead of just assuming guilt based on limited information or preconceived notions.
It's about recognizing the humanity in everyone, even those accused of wrongdoing.
It's about treating everyone with dignity and respect, regardless of the circumstances.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important message to take away from this deep dive. It's not just about interrogation analysis. It's about how we approach the world, how we interact with others, and how we strive to create a more just and equitable society.
It's about recognizing the power of perspective and being willing to challenge our own assumptions.
And I think that leads us to the final thought-provoking question this deep dive inspired for me.
Oh, I love these final thoughts. Hit me with it.
You know, it's fascinating, right? We saw how Dixon stayed calm and collected, while Justin was, really fired up.
Yeah, totally different reactions, but both innocent.
It really gets you thinking, doesn't it? Like, how can we become more aware of our own biases so we don't make the same mistakes those detectives did?
It's like we need to develop a sort of, I don't know, a mental flexibility. Be able to step back from a situation and question our gut reactions.
Exactly. Like that second investigator who looked at Dixon's case with fresh eyes.
Yeah, he was able to see things the first detective missed.
It's about cultivating a sense of curiosity, being open to different possibilities.
But that's tough, right? We all have our own baggage, our own experiences that shape how we see the world.
It is, but the first step is awareness. Recognizing that we don't have all the answers, that our perspective is just one of many.
So like actively seeking out other viewpoints.
Exactly. Even, or maybe especially, when those viewpoints challenge our own.
Makes sense. If we only hear what we already agree with, we're not really learning anything new.
Right. And sometimes that discomfort, that feeling of being challenged is actually a sign that we're growing.
So it's more than just about interrogation analysis, isn't it? It's about being a critical thinker, questioning assumptions, and being open to new ideas.
It's about engaging with the world in a more thoughtful way.
And recognizing that our actions, our judgments, have real consequences.
Especially when it comes to issues of justice and fairness.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about.
Me too. It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more just and equitable society.
Starts with each of us, right? Questioning our own biases, seeking out diverse perspectives, and being willing to admit when we're wrong.
Absolutely. That's the foundation of a truly informed and compassionate worldview.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into interrogation analysis.
Time flies when you're having fun, huh?
It really does. But even though we've come to the end of this particular journey, the conversation doesn't end here.
That's right. We've just scratched the surface of these complex issues.
So keep those mental gears turning, folks. Keep questioning, keep learning, and keep striving to make the world a little bit better, one deep dive at a time.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's been a pleasure. And until next time, stay curious.
Stay curious out there, everyone.